The rain hammered against our bedroom window like angry fingers tapping out Morse code. 3 in the morning, and I was wide awake again, staring at the ceiling while Kara slept beside me. She'd been restless lately, tossing and turning, muttering names I couldn't quite catch. Tonight was different, though. Tonight she was sleeping like a baby. My name is Cole Merrick, and I fix boats for a living. Not glamorous work, but honest. I've got grease under my fingernails and calluses on my palms, and I can spot when something's not running right from 50 yards away. Engines, hulls, people, they all give off the same kind of signals when they're about to break down. Kara had been giving off those signals for weeks. I rolled over and watched her face in the dim light filtering through our curtains. Even in sleep, she looked different somehow. Secretive. Her phone was charging on the nightstand, screen down like always now. When had that started? Used to be she'd leave it face up, didn't care who saw her messages. Now it was like she was protecting state secrets. Going on a girls' trip this weekend, she'd announced yesterday over dinner, just like that. No discussion, no asking if I had plans. Tina booked us a spa retreat up in Bar Harbor. We leave Friday morning. Bar Harbor, 2 hours north. Expensive as hell, and exactly the kind of place Kara would go to spend money we didn't have. But something about the way she said it felt rehearsed, like she'd been practicing the words in her head. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and padded downstairs to the kitchen. Our house wasn't much to look at, a 2-story colonial that had seen better decades, but it was ours. Or would be, once we finished paying the bank for the privilege. The floorboards creaked in all the familiar places, and the kitchen faucet dripped no matter how many times I fixed it. I made coffee and sat at the table, listening to the storm outside. Lightning flickered, illuminating our backyard for brief moments. The old oak tree we'd planted when we first moved in was bending in the wind, but its roots were deep. It would weather this storm just like it had weathered all the others. Unlike my marriage, apparently. The coffee was bitter, but it kept my hands busy. I kept thinking about little things that hadn't made sense at the time. Kara working late more often. New clothes appearing in her closet. The way she'd started showering as soon as she got home, like she needed to wash something off. And then there was the phone call I'd overheard last week. I'd come home early from the marina, engine oil staining my work shirt, and found her in the living room with her back to me. She was speaking in that low, intimate voice she used to use with me, the voice that meant secrets and promises. I know, she was saying. But we have to be careful. Cole's not stupid. She'd spun around when she heard my footsteps, ending the call so fast she nearly dropped the phone. Work stuff, she'd said, but her cheeks were flushed and her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Work stuff. Right. I finished my coffee and went back upstairs. Kara was still sleeping, one arm thrown over her face like she was trying to block out the world. Her suitcase sat in the corner, already packed for her weekend getaway. She'd done it yesterday, humming some song I didn't recognize. Something made me walk over to that suitcase. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you would. I unzipped the bag as quietly as I could, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Inside were all the things you'd expect. Clothes, toiletries, that romance novel she'd been reading. But underneath her sweaters, my fingers found something that made my stomach drop. A small plastic case. Birth control pills. Kara had her tubes tied 3 years ago. Said she was done having kids, done with the hormones, done with all of it. We'd had a fight about it because I'd wanted to try for one more, but she'd been adamant. I'm not a baby factory, Cole, she'd said. 2 kids are enough. So why was she carrying birth control pills to a spa weekend with the girls? I kept searching, my hands shaking now. Under her makeup bag, I found a second phone, a cheap prepaid thing, the kind people buy when they don't want calls traced back to them. The kind people use when they're planning things they shouldn't be planning. The screen was locked, but I could see she had 17 unread messages. I stood there in the dark, holding that phone, and felt something shift inside me. It was like watching the last bolt come loose on an engine you'd been trying to save. That moment when you realize all your work, all your hope, all your effort has been for nothing. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Kara stirred in the bed, and I quickly put everything back the way I'd found it. My hands were steadier now. Funny how certainty can calm you down, even when it's the kind of certainty that ruins your life. I had 16 hours before she left for her spa weekend. 16 hours to figure out exactly what my wife was up to and with whom. I went back downstairs and fired up my laptop. If Kara wanted to play games, she was about to learn that I'd been fixing broken things a lot longer than she'd been breaking them. The first thing I did was check our bank accounts, joint checking, joint savings, the credit cards we'd opened together when we were young and stupid and thought love was enough to pay the bills. Everything looked normal at first glance, but when I dug deeper, I found small withdrawals. 20 here, 40 there, cash advances that added up to nearly $800 over the past month. $800. That was grocery money, utility money, money we couldn't afford to lose. But Kara had been pulling it out bit by bit, careful not to take enough at once to trigger any alerts. Smart, but not smart enough. The second thing I did was install a GPS tracking app on her phone. Not the prepaid one, I couldn't get to that without the passcode, but her regular phone, the one she'd left charging downstairs while she slept. It took me 20 minutes to figure out how to do it without leaving any traces, and another 10 to test it. The little red dot on my screen showed her location as home. Perfect. The third thing I did was call the credit card companies. Told them I'd lost my wallet, needed to freeze all our cards until I could get new ones. They were very understanding, helpful even. Amazing how cooperative people can be when you're polite and patient and sound like you know what you're talking about. By the time I was finished, the sun was coming up. I could hear Kara moving around upstairs, getting ready for her day. Her last day of thinking she was smarter than me. I made fresh coffee and scrambled some eggs, playing the part of the clueless husband. When she came downstairs, she was dressed for work in a navy blue skirt and white blouse that showed just enough skin to be interesting. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like a woman with places to go and people to see. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips were cool, and she smelled like expensive perfume. When had she started wearing expensive perfume? "Morning," I said. "Coffee's fresh." She poured herself a cup and checked her phone. I watched her face, looking for any sign that she knew what I'd done, but she just scrolled through her messages like always, frowning at whatever she was reading. Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff," she said. There was that phrase again. Work stuff. The universal excuse for everything she didn't want to explain. "You excited about your weekend?" I kept my voice light, conversational. Just a husband making small talk with his wife. "Should be fun," she said. "Tina's been planning this for weeks. Massages, facials, the whole thing. You know how she gets." I knew how Tina got. Loud, dramatic, always posting pictures of everything she did. If Kara was really going on a spa weekend with Tina, social media would be flooded with photos by Saturday night. Somehow I doubted that was going to happen. "Well, have a good time," I said. "I'll probably just work on the boat. Maybe catch up with Gus." Gus Henley ran the Split Rail, the kind of bar where working men went to complain about their lives over cheap beer and cheaper whiskey. He was also a former cop who knew everybody's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. If something was going on in our little town, Gus would know about it. Kara finished her coffee and grabbed her purse. "I'll be home around 6 to pick up my bag," she said. "Flight's at 8. "Flight?" She'd said they were driving to Bar Harbor. Now suddenly it was a flight? "Have a good day at work," I said, and watched her walk out the door. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I pulled up the tracking app on my phone. The little red dot was moving south toward downtown, where Kara worked for a public relations firm that specialized in making rich people look good to the public. She'd been there for 5 years, ever since we'd moved to Maine from Boston. Good job, decent pay, flexible hours, everything a working mother could want, or everything a cheating wife could use as cover. I spent the morning at the marina, working on a 30-foot cabin cruiser that had been giving its owner trouble. The engine was running rough, probably a fuel system issue. Simple enough to diagnose, harder to fix. You had to take apart half the motor to get to the real problem, and by the time you were done, your hands were black with grease and your back was screaming from being bent over the engine compartment. But I liked the work. There was something honest about it. Engines didn't lie to you. They either ran or they didn't. When they broke, there was always a reason, and if you were patient and methodical, you could find that reason and fix it. People were more complicated. Around lunchtime, I checked the tracking app again. Kara's dot was still at her office building. Good. That meant she was actually at work, not off somewhere planning her weekend of deception. I called Vera Halden. Vera was married to my brother Finn, and if there was anyone in the world I trusted to tell me the truth, it was her. She answered on the second ring. "Cole? What's wrong?" Vera always knew when something was wrong. It was like she had radar for other people's problems. Maybe that came from being married to Finn, who had been creating problems for people since we were kids. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Always am." Has Finn mentioned anything about Kara lately? Anything at all? There was a pause. A long one. In my experience, long pauses usually meant bad news. Why are you asking? Just answer the question, Vera. Please. Another pause. Then, he's been working late a lot. Says he's got some big project at the office, but... She trailed off. But what? But he's been different. Secretive. And yesterday I found a receipt in his pocket for dinner at that fancy place downtown. The one with the piano bar. My stomach clenched. When was the receipt dated? Tuesday night. The same night he said he was working late? Tuesday night. The same night Kara had come home 2 hours late, claiming she'd been stuck in a client meeting. Vera, I said, I think we need to talk. I met Vera at her house an hour later. She lived in one of those cozy bungalows on Elm Street, the kind with flower boxes in the windows and a front porch swing that actually got used. It was the opposite of the sterile suburban palace Finn had wanted, but Vera had put her foot down. I want a home, she'd told him, not a museum. She was waiting for me with coffee and the kind of chocolate chip cookies that made you forget your troubles for at least 5 minutes. Vera was like that, always trying to take care of people, even when her own world was falling apart. Show me the receipt, I said. She handed it over without a word. Chez Laurent, Tuesday, 8:47 p.m. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, 1 dessert shared, the kind of intimate dinner you have when you're trying to impress someone, or when you're celebrating something you shouldn't be celebrating. Finn hates French food, Vera said quietly. Says it's pretentious. But Kara loves it. I folded the receipt and handed it back to her. She dragged me there for our anniversary 2 years ago, spent half the meal taking pictures of her plate. Vera sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug like she was trying to warm herself from the inside out. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. People underestimated her because of her size, but that was a mistake. Vera Halden was tougher than most men I knew. How long have you suspected? She asked. Couple weeks, maybe longer. You know how it is? You tell yourself you're being paranoid, that you're seeing things that aren't there. But then the evidence starts piling up. What kind of evidence? I told her about the phone calls, the late nights, the cash withdrawals. I told her about the birth control pills and the prepaid phone. By the time I was finished, Vera's face had gone pale. We have to be sure, she said. Before we do anything, we have to be absolutely certain. I'm already certain, but I understand what you mean. She got up and started pacing around her small living room. It was a nervous habit she'd had since college. Finn used to tease her about it, said she looked like a caged animal. I'd always thought it looked like she was planning something. Finn's got an iPad, she said suddenly. He thinks I don't know the passcode, but I've watched him type it in 100 times. If he's been messaging Kara. The messages would be there? Exactly. We looked at each other across the room, 2 people who'd trusted the wrong people, who'd built their lives on foundations that were crumbling beneath their feet. But we weren't going down without a fight. Where is he now? I asked. Office. Real office this time, I think. He's got a client meeting at 3. I checked my watch. 2:15. That gives us maybe an hour before he gets home. And Kara? I pulled out my phone and checked the tracking app. The little red dot was still at her office building. Still at work, but she said she'd be home at 6 to get her bag. Vera stopped pacing. Her bag for the spa weekend that isn't really a spa weekend. That's the one. Okay. She took a deep breath. Let's go find out what my husband and your wife have been saying to each other. Finn and Vera's house was a 15-minute drive across town. It was everything Vera's bungalow wasn't. Big, modern, expensive. The kind of place that looked great in magazines, but felt cold when you actually lived in it. Finn had insisted on buying it when he got his promotion at the insurance company. Image matters, he'd said. People need to see that we're successful. I'd never understood that mentality. Success wasn't about what other people thought of your house or your car or your clothes. Success was about being able to sleep at night without wondering if the people you loved were lying to you. Vera let us in through the front door and led me to Finn's home office. The iPad was sitting on his desk, plugged into the charger. She picked it up with steady hands and typed in the passcode. Birthday? I guessed. His car's license plate number. He thinks he's so clever. The screen lit up, showing Finn's desktop. Vera navigated to his messages app, and we both held our breath as the conversations loaded. There it was, a text thread with Kara that went back 3 weeks. Oh, Finn, Vera whispered. You stupid, stupid man. The messages were all there, Plans for secret meetings, complaints about their respective spouses, discussions about the weekend getaway they'd been planning, and worse, much worse, there were messages about what they planned to do after the weekend. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a message from Kara dated 3 days ago. "He's getting tired of sneaking around, says it's time to make some changes." Vera scrolled down to Finn's response. "He agrees. Says they should both file for divorce after the weekend. Make a clean break." A clean break. I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. Is that what they're calling it? But the next set of messages made it even worse. They weren't just planning to leave us. They were planning to make sure they came out ahead in the divorce proceedings. "Cole's been drinking more lately," Kara had written. "Getting angry over little things. I've been documenting everything." Finn's response, "Good. Vera's been seeing that therapist. I can probably use that to show she's unstable." I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. My wife was planning to frame me as an abusive husband. My brother was planning to use Vera's therapy sessions she'd started after her mother passed away last year, as evidence that she was mentally unfit. "They're not just cheating," Vera said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're trying to destroy us." I kept reading. The messages got worse. Kara talking about hiding assets. Finn discussing how to make us look bad in front of friends and family. They'd thought of everything, planned for every contingency, except one. They hadn't planned on us finding out before they were ready to spring their trap. "We need copies of all this," I said. Vera nodded and started forwarding the messages to her own phone. "What are we going to do with them?" "I don't know yet, but we're going to do something." She finished with the messages and put the iPad back exactly where she'd found it. We left the house as quietly as we'd entered it, two conspirators in our own lives. "I feel sick," Vera said as we sat in my truck in her driveway. "That's the betrayal talking. It'll pass." "Will it?" I looked at her, this small, strong woman who'd been nothing but loyal to my worthless brother for 8 years. She deserved better than Finn. Hell, she deserved better than all of us. "The sickness will pass," I said. "The anger won't. And that's good. We're going to need the anger." My phone buzzed. A text message from Kara. "Running late. Won't be home until 7. Don't wait up if you're tired." I showed Vera the message. She's buying herself more time. Probably meeting him somewhere to finalize their plans. Should we follow her? I checked the tracking app. Kara's dot was on the move, heading away from downtown toward the nicer part of town where Finn worked. "No need," I said. "I already know where she's going." We watched the little red dot on my phone screen as it moved through the streets of our town. Streets we'd both grown up on, where we'd learned to ride bikes and had first crushes and made all the mistakes that seemed so important at the time. Now we were making different kinds of mistakes. Adult mistakes, the kind that didn't just sting or embarrass you, they reshaped your understanding of yourself. The kind that wrecked lives and destroyed families and left you wondering how you'd been so blind for so long. The realization hit with a heaviness I could almost feel in my bones, as if every misstep from the past year had finally lined up and decided to announce themselves at once. The dot on the map stopped moving. Kara was at Finn's office building, a sleek glass and steel place where people wore sharp suits, drank expensive coffee, and pretended their private scandals weren't leaking into the carpet. "What now?" Vera asked. Her voice was steady, but the tightness around her eyes gave her away. She was holding herself together by willpower alone, the same way I was. I thought about it. We had evidence of the affair, evidence of their plans to frame us in the divorce proceedings. Enough to ruin them twice over. Enough to make their whole polished world collapse in on itself. We could confront them, demand explanations we already knew wouldn't satisfy us, try to salvage something from the wreckage of our marriages, though neither of us truly believed there was anything left worth salvaging, or we could do something else entirely, something that didn't rely on their honesty or the faint hope of repentance. "Now we go see Gus," I said. The decision landed with a finality that surprised even me. I need advice from someone who's seen this kind of thing before. The split rail was exactly the kind of place you'd expect to find in a working-class town in Maine. A refuge for people who'd worked hard since they were teenagers and didn't expect the world to treat them gently. Dark wood, scarred from years of use, dim lights that hummed faintly, and the smell of fried food and spilled beer soaked into everything like a permanent second skin. The kind of place where you could walk in at any hour and know exactly what kind of day everyone else had had just by looking at how they held their shoulders. The clientele was mostly guys like me, mechanics, fishermen, construction workers, men who worked with their hands, men who didn't have much patience for nonsense, men who'd been disappointed enough times to stop expecting anything better. You didn't need to pretend here. You didn't need a script. Gus Henley was behind the bar, polishing glasses and listening to a lobsterman complain about the price of bait. He was a big man, 6'4", and built like the linebacker he'd been in high school, the kind of presence that automatically made the room feel smaller around him. 20 years as a cop had taught him how to read people before they even spoke, and 10 years running the split rail had taught him how to keep his mouth shut when it mattered, and when it didn't. He saw us come in and gave a single nod toward a corner booth. Not a greeting, not a question, just an acknowledgement that he knew something was wrong and was giving us space to say it on our own terms. We ordered coffee. It was too early in the day for anything stronger, though I was tempted by the comfort of something that would burn on the way down, and I told him the whole story, all of it, every ugly detail. The lies, the manufactured accusations, the hidden plans, the humiliating realization of how long the two people closest to us had been treating us like fools. Gus listened without interrupting, his face showing nothing. No shock, no pity, no anger. Just that steady, thoughtful focus he had when he was piecing something together behind the scenes. The kind of look that made you feel like your chaos was a solvable problem to him. When I finished, he sat back and studied us both for a long moment, as if weighing the version of us he remembered against the version sitting in front of him now. "How sure are you?" he asked, voice low and even. "Sure enough." "Evidence?" I showed him some of the text messages Vera had forwarded to her phone, the ones Finn and Kara thought were safely tucked away where we'd never see them. Gus read them carefully, his expression growing darker with each line, like a storm rolling in. "Your brother's a piece of work," he said finally, handing the phone back. "Tell me something I don't know. And your wife's no better," he added, glancing at Vera with a sympathy she didn't seem to expect. "This stuff about documenting your drinking, making you look abusive, that's calculated. Cold. That's someone prepping a story long before the first chapter starts. So what do I do?" Gus leaned forward, forearms on the table, lowering his voice just enough to force us to pay attention. "Depends what you want to accomplish. You want to save your marriage?" The question hung in the air, heavy, inescapable. "I want justice," I said. It surprised me how steady the words came out. No hesitation, no doubt. "Those aren't the same thing." "I know." He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for that exact answer. "Justice I can help you with, but you need to be smart about it. These two think they're playing chess while you're playing checkers. They think they're the ones setting the pace, deciding the rules. Time to show them they're wrong." My pulse quickened. Not from fear, but from something sharper, something that felt dangerously close to purpose. "What do you have in mind?" Gus smiled, a small, knowing thing that suggested he'd been down this road more than once. And for the first time since I'd found that prepaid phone in Kara's coat pocket, I felt something like hope, raw, tentative, unexpected, stirring in my chest. "First thing," he said, tapping the table lightly, "we make sure they go through with their weekend plans. Let them think they're getting away with something. People like them, they move fast when they think no one's watching." "And then?" Vera asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then," Gus said, leaning back with the confidence of a man who knew exactly where every piece on the board would end up, "we give them a weekend they'll never forget." I got home at 5:30, giving myself enough time to play the unsuspecting husband before Kara arrived. I changed into clean clothes, started dinner, and tried to look like a man whose biggest worry was whether we had enough beer in the fridge. The tracking app showed Kara leaving Finn's office building at 6:15. She'd be home in 20 minutes, just enough time to grab her bag and rush off to catch her flight. The flight that didn't exist, to the spa weekend that was really a romantic getaway with my brother. I was stirring pasta sauce when she walked through the door, looking flustered and checking her phone. "Sorry I'm late," she said, kissing my cheek again. The same cool lips, the same expensive perfume. "Client emergency." "No problem. Dinner's almost ready if you want to grab a quick bite." "Can't. I'll miss my flight." She was already heading upstairs to get her suitcase. "Huh? Tina's picking me up in 10 minutes. "Tina." "Right." I wondered if Tina even knew she was being used as cover for an affair. Probably not. Kara was good at keeping her lies compartmentalized. I followed her upstairs, playing my part. "You sure you packed everything?" "I think so." She was checking her suitcase one more time, making sure she had everything she needed for her weekend of betrayal. The birth control pills were still there, hidden under her sweaters. The prepaid phone was in her purse. "Weather's supposed to be nice this weekend," I said. "Perfect for a spa retreat." She wasn't really listening, too focused on her preparations. "Oh, I might not have great cell service up there. Don't worry if you can't reach me." "Of course. Can't have the husband calling at an inconvenient moment." "I'll be fine," I said. Gus wants me to help him move some furniture tomorrow, and I've got that engine rebuild to finish. She zipped up her suitcase and turned to face me. For just a moment, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But then it was gone, replaced by the bright, fake smile she'd been wearing for weeks. I should be back Sunday evening, she said. I'll call you when I land. Have fun. You deserve a break. She hugged me then, and I hugged her back, both of us pretending this was normal. Just a husband and wife saying goodbye for the weekend? Nothing more complicated than that. A car honked outside. Kara grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. That's my ride, she said. Love you. Love you too. I watched from the window as she got into a taxi, not Tina's car, I noticed, and disappeared into the night. Then I pulled out my phone and checked the tracking app. The little red dot was moving toward the airport. Interesting. Maybe they really were flying somewhere, or maybe they were just being extra careful about their cover story. I called Vera. She just left, I said. Taxi to the airport. Finn left an hour ago, said he was meeting some college friends in Portland for a guy's weekend. Portland's only an hour south of here. I know, but guess what I found after he left? What? Reservation confirmation in his email. 2 nights at the Cliffside Inn, that fancy place up in Camden. Camden, 30 minutes north of us, right on the coast. The kind of place couples went for romantic weekends.
In my house! You bastard!
Relax, man. It's just business.
Please, don't shoot!
Get off!
You won't do it. You don't have the guts.
Don't! Please don't shoot him! Please! I'm begging you! Don't do this! No! Please, no!
The Cliffside Inn was particularly notorious for its privacy and discretion. So, they're not going far, I said. That's good. Makes things easier. What things? You'll see. Can you meet me at Gus's place tomorrow morning? Say around 10? Cole, what are you planning? Justice, just like we talked about. There was a pause. Then, okay, but promise me we're not going to do anything that lands us in jail. No jail time, I promised. But I can't promise they won't wish they were in jail when we're done with them. After Vera hung up, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out how I felt. Angry, obviously. Betrayed, definitely. But underneath those emotions was something else, something colder and more focused. Relief. For weeks, I'd been questioning myself, wondering if I was losing my mind, if I was seeing problems that didn't exist. Now I knew the truth. My instincts had been right. My marriage was over, had probably been over for months. Kara and Finn had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I spent the evening preparing. First, I drove to Camden and found the Cliffside Inn. It was exactly what I'd expected, a restored Victorian mansion perched on a bluff overlooking Penobscot Bay. Expensive cars in the parking lot, soft lighting in the windows, the kind of place that promised romance and delivered discretion. I didn't see Finn's BMW in the lot yet, but it was still early. They'd probably grab dinner somewhere first, play out their little fantasy of being a legitimate couple. Next, I stopped at an electronics store and bought a few things I was going to need. Nothing illegal, nothing that would get me in trouble. Just some basic surveillance equipment that anyone could buy online. Finally, I drove back to Finn's house. Vera had given me the spare key, and I let myself in through the back door. The place felt different when Finn wasn't there, less oppressive somehow. I went to his home office and set up a small camera in the corner, hidden behind some books on a shelf. The camera was motion-activated and would record everything that happened in the room. If Finn and Kara came back here at some point during the weekend, I'd have a record of it. I also installed a small recording device in the living room, tucked behind the couch where no one would think to look for it. The device would pick up conversations from anywhere in the room and transmit them to my phone. By the time I was finished, it was almost midnight. I checked the tracking app one more time. Kara's dot was stationary now, showing her location as Camden, right where I'd expected her to be. I drove home through empty streets, past houses where normal couples were sleeping peacefully in their beds, trusting each other, building lives together instead of tearing them apart. I envied those people. But I didn't want to be one of them anymore. I wanted to be something else entirely. I wanted to be the kind of man who fought back. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, with the kind of crisp air that made you glad to be alive. I met Vera and Gus at the split rail at 10 o'clock sharp. The bar was closed, but Gus had let us in through the back door. "Okay," he said, setting 3 cups of coffee on a table. "Let's talk strategy." I'd filled him in on everything the night before. The hotel reservation, the surveillance equipment, the tracking app. He'd listened with the kind of professional interest he'd probably shown when he was still wearing a badge. "First question," he said. "What's the end game here? What do you want to accomplish?" "I want them exposed," I said. "I want everyone to know what they did." "Everyone?" "Friends, family, co-workers. I want their reputations destroyed." Vera shifted uncomfortably. "That seems harsh." "Harsh?" I stared at her. "They were planning to frame us as abusive and unstable. They were going to take everything we've worked for and leave us with nothing, and you think exposing them is harsh?" "No," she said quietly. "You're right. I've never done anything like this before." "Neither have I, but I'm learning fast." Gus leaned back in his chair, studying us both. "Exposure's good," he said, "but it has to be done right. You can't just start posting their text messages on social media. That makes you look petty. So, what do you suggest?" "Public humiliation, but classy public humiliation. The kind that makes them look like the bad guys and you look like the victims." "How?" Gus smiled. "Leave that to me. But first, we need more evidence. The text messages are good, but we need something visual, something that can't be denied or explained away." I thought about the camera I'd hidden in Finn's office. "I might be able to get that." "Good. And we need to time everything perfectly. You want maximum impact, which means maximum audience." "The Harvest Festival," Vera said suddenly. We both looked at her. "Tomorrow night," she explained. "The whole town turns out for the Harvest Festival. Everyone we know will be there." Gus nodded slowly. "That could work. Very public, lots of witnesses, hard for them to control the narrative." "But they'll still be in Camden tomorrow night," I pointed out. "Will they?" Gus pulled out his phone and showed us the weather forecast. Storm coming in tomorrow afternoon, big one, the kind that knocks out power and floods roads. I saw where he was going with this. "They'll have to come home early." "Exactly, and when they do, they'll be walking into a trap." We spent the next hour working out the details. It was a complicated plan, with a lot of moving parts, but it could work. It would require perfect timing and a little bit of luck, but it could definitely work. "One more thing," Gus said as we were getting ready to leave. "You both need to be absolutely sure you want to do this. Once we pull the trigger, there's no going back. Your marriages will be over, your relationships with Finn will be finished, and everyone in town will know your business." I thought about Kara's cool lips and fake smiles, about the prepaid phone and the birth control pills, about the text messages planning my destruction. "I'm sure," I said. Vera took longer to answer, but finally she nodded. "I'm sure too." "Then let's give them a homecoming they'll never forget." Sunday morning brought the kind of weather that made you want to stay in bed with a good book and a hot cup of coffee. Gray clouds were building on the horizon, and the wind was picking up, rattling the windows of my empty house. I checked the tracking app. Kara was still in Camden, probably having breakfast in bed with my brother while I sat alone in the kitchen we'd shared for 5 years. The thought should have made me angry, but instead I felt something closer to pity. They had no idea what was waiting for them. My phone rang. Vera. "The Weather Service just issued a storm warning," she said. "Winds up to 60 miles per hour, possible flooding in low-lying areas. They're recommending people avoid unnecessary travel after 3 p.m. "Perfect. Any word from the happy couple?" "Finn texted me an hour ago. Said they might have to cut the weekend short because of the weather." "How thoughtful of him to let you know." "Cole, I've been thinking about this all night. Are we really going to go through with it?" I understood her hesitation. Vera was a good person, the kind who gave people the benefit of the doubt, and always looked for the best in others. This kind of calculated revenge went against every instinct she had. But sometimes good people had to do hard things. "They made their choice," I said. "Now we're making ours." "I know. I keep thinking about how things used to be, when we were all friends, when we trusted each other." "Those people don't exist anymore, Vera. Maybe they never did." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Okay. What do you need me to do?" "Just be ready. When they come home, we'll know about it." I spent the morning making final preparations. I drove to Camden and confirmed that Finn's BMW was still in the Cliffside Inn parking lot. Then I stopped by the marina and told my boss I might not be in tomorrow, depending on how bad the storm got. Personal business, I said, which was true enough. By noon, the wind was really howling, and the first drops of rain were starting to fall. I was back home, monitoring the tracking app and waiting for Kara to make her move. At 1:47 p.m., her dots started moving. I called Vera. They're on their way. Already? The storm's not supposed to hit until tonight. Maybe they're smarter than we gave them credit for. Or maybe they just got tired of each other's company. How long until they get here? I watched the dot moving south on Route 1. 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on traffic. That doesn't give us much time. We don't need much time. Everything's already set up. I hung up and called Gus. He was at the split rail, getting ready for what he expected to be a busy night. Storm nights always brought out the drinkers. They're coming home early, I told him. Good. That actually works better for us. More people will be around to witness the fireworks. You sure about this? Cole, I've been watching cheaters get their comeuppance for 20 years. Trust me, this is going to be beautiful. The next hour crawled by like a wounded animal. I sat in my living room, watching the storm build outside and tracking Kara's progress on my phone. The little red dot moved steadily south, getting closer to home with each refresh. At 2:52, my phone buzzed with a text from Kara. Storm's getting bad up here. Coming home early. Should be there around 4. I texted back, drive safe. Love you. The lies came so easily now. At 3:15, Vera called. Finn just pulled into our driveway. Already? The tracker shows Kara's still 20 minutes out. Maybe they took separate cars, or maybe she stopped somewhere. Doesn't matter. Is he alone? Yes. He's getting his bag out of the trunk. Okay. Give him a few minutes to get settled, then start phase 1. Phase 1 was simple. Vera was going to confront Finn about the affair, get him talking, maybe even get him to admit what he'd been doing. The recording device I'd hidden in their living room would capture everything. What if he denies it? Then you show him the text messages, but don't show him all of them. Save the worst ones for later. Cole, I'm scared. I know, but you're stronger than you think, and remember, I'll be listening to everything. If things get out of hand, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Okay, here goes nothing. At 3:31, Kara's dot finally stopped moving. She was home. I gave her 10 minutes to get inside and get comfortable, then I called her. Hey, honey, she said, and I could hear the fake cheerfulness in her voice. Just got back. The weather up there was getting really nasty. I'm glad you made it home safe. How was the spa? Oh, it was wonderful. So relaxing. Tina and I had the best time. More lies. I wondered if she even remembered what the truth looked like anymore. That's great. Listen, I'm over at Gus's helping him prep for the storm. Might be here for a while. You okay on your own? Of course. I'm just going to take a bath and go to bed early. All that relaxation wore me out. Okay, I'll try not to wake you when I get home. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and immediately called Vera. How's it going over there? He's not admitting anything, she said in a low voice. But he's acting guilty, defensive, and he keeps checking his phone. Probably wondering why Kara isn't texting him back. What now? Now you escalate. Show him some of the text messages. Which ones? The ones about the dinner at Chez Laurent, the ones about meeting up this weekend. Make him think that's all you know. And then? Then you see what he does. What Finn did was panic. According to Vera, who called me back 20 minutes later, he'd gone pale when she showed him the messages. He'd tried to explain them away at first. Kara was just a friend. They'd run into each other at the restaurant. The weekend thing was a misunderstanding. But when Vera kept pressing, he'd cracked. He admitted it, she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. All of it. The affair, the planning, everything. Did you get it on tape? The recorder's still running. Good. What's he doing now? Pacing around the living room, trying to figure out what to do. He wants to call Kara, but I told him I'd already talked to her. You told him what? That I called her this afternoon and confronted her too. That she admitted everything and agreed to meet us tomorrow night to figure out how to handle the situation. Vera, you're brilliant. I learned from the best. Where are you supposed to meet? The Harvest Festival. I told him Kara thought it would be better to do it in public, so no one would make a scene. Perfect. Everything was falling into place exactly as we'd planned. What did he say to that? He agreed, said it was probably for the best. Cole, he actually looked relieved, like he was glad it was finally out in the open. He won't be relieved for long. I spent the rest of the evening monitoring both my targets. Kara stayed home, probably trying to figure out why Finn wasn't responding to her messages. Finn stayed at his house with Vera, probably trying to figure out how to spin the situation to his advantage. Neither of them had any idea what was really coming. The storm hit around 9 p.m., bringing driving rain and winds that made the whole house shake. Perfect weather for the kind of night that changes everything. I sat in my dark living room, listening to the storm and thinking about the past 5 years of my life. 5 years of marriage. Of building something I thought was real and permanent. 5 years of trusting someone who had been planning to destroy me. But I wasn't the same man I'd been a week ago. That man had been naive, trusting, willing to believe the best of people even when they showed him their worst. This man was different. This man had learned that sometimes the only way to deal with betrayal was to betray right back. And tomorrow night, at the Harvest Festival, in front of half the town, I was going to teach my wife and my brother a lesson they'd never forget. The storm raged on outside, but inside I felt perfectly calm. The anger was still there, burning cold and steady in my chest. But it was controlled now, focused. Tomorrow, justice would be served. Monday evening brought clear skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that made you remember why people moved to Maine in the first place. The storm had blown through, leaving behind puddles and scattered leaves, but no real damage. Perfect weather for the annual Harvest Festival. I spent the day making final preparations. The festival started at 6, and I wanted everything ready before the crowds arrived. Gus had been busy too. As one of the festival organizers, he'd managed to get us prime real estate, a booth right in the center of the town square, where everyone would have to pass by. Officially, we were selling raffle tickets for the volunteer fire department. Unofficially, we were setting up the stage for the evening's main event. "You sure about the timing?" Gus asked as we set up the booth. Vera confirmed it this morning. "They'll be here at 7:30. "And they think they're just meeting to discuss the situation like civilized adults?" "That's what they think." Gus shook his head. "Your brother always was too trusting." "My brother always was too stupid." By 6 o'clock, the festival was in full swing. The town square was packed with families enjoying the last warm evening of the season. Kids ran between the booths with sticky fingers and chocolate-covered faces. Teenagers clustered in groups, pretending they were too cool to be there while secretly having the time of their lives. Adults wandered around with cups of hot cider, catching up with neighbors they hadn't seen since last year's festival. It was the kind of wholesome, small-town scene that made you believe in the basic goodness of people, which made what I was about to do feel even more necessary. Vera arrived at 7, looking nervous but determined. She'd dressed carefully for the occasion. Nice jeans, a sweater that brought out her eyes, just enough makeup to look put together without seeming like she was trying too hard. She looked like exactly what she was, a good woman who'd been wronged by people she trusted. "Any word from them?" she asked. "Finn texted you an hour ago, said they'd be here at 7:30 like you agreed. And Kara?" "She thinks I'm working late at the marina. Told her I might stop by the festival later if I finished in time." "So she has no idea you'll be here?" "None at all." Vera looked around at the crowds of people, the families enjoying their evening out. "Cole, are you sure we should do this here, with all these people around?" "That's exactly why we should do it here. They've been lying to everyone, playing the role of loving spouses while they planned to destroy us. It's only fitting that everyone should see who they really are. But the children will learn an important lesson about actions and consequences." Gus appeared beside us, carrying a small portable speaker and a tablet computer. "Everything's ready," he said. "You sure you want to go through with this?" I thought about Kara's fake smiles and cold kisses, about Finn's plan to use Vera's therapy sessions against her, about the text messages plotting my destruction while I slept beside my wife, trusting her completely. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. At 7:25, I saw them coming across the square. Finn was easy to spot. Tall, blonde, wearing the kind of expensive casual clothes that screamed, "Look how successful I am." Kara was beside him, and even from a distance I could see the tension in her posture. They looked like what they were, two people who'd been caught doing something they shouldn't have been doing, trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. "There they are," Vera said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Remember the plan," I told her. "Get them talking, keep them focused on you. I'll handle the rest." Vera nodded and walked toward them, intercepting them about 20 feet from our booth. I watched as she greeted them both with the kind of stiff politeness you use with people you don't quite trust anymore. They talked for a few minutes, their voices too low for me to hear over the crowd noise. But I could see their body language, the way Finn kept glancing around like he was looking for an escape route, the way Kara kept checking her phone. Finally, Vera led them toward our booth. This was it. "Cole, Kara's voice was sharp with surprise when she saw me. "What are you doing here? I thought you were working." "Finished early," I said, standing up from behind the booth. "Thought I'd come support the community." Finn was staring at me with the kind of expression you see on someone's face right before they realize they've walked into a trap. "Cole? I didn't expect to see you here." "I'll bet you didn't." The four of us stood there for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Around us, the festival continued, people laughing and talking and enjoying their evening, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in their midst. "So," I said, breaking the silence, "Vera tells me you two have something you want to discuss." Kara and Finn exchanged glances. They were trying to figure out how much I knew, how much they could still salvage from the situation. "Cole," Kara said, her voice taking on the reasonable, patient tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. "This is really between Finn and Vera. You don't need to be involved." "Oh, but I think I do. See, I've been doing some research this weekend, learning all kinds of interesting things." I pulled out my phone and opened the app that connected to the recording device in Finn's living room. With a few taps, I had yesterday's conversation queued up and ready to play. "For instance," I said, "I learned that my wife has been having an affair with my brother." Kara went pale. "Cole, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You're very good at explaining things. Very creative." I nodded to Gus, who connected my phone to the portable speaker. The sound quality wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. Finn's voice came through clearly. "I can't keep doing this, Vera. Sneaking around, lying to you and Cole. It's eating me alive." And then Vera's voice, carefully controlled. "So you admit it? You're having an affair with Kara?" "Yes, I admit it. I'm sorry, but yes." A small crowd was starting to gather around us, drawn by the sound of the recording and the obvious tension between the four of us. I recognized most of the faces: neighbors, co-workers, people from church, the same people Kara and Finn had been planning to lie to about me and Vera. "Turn that off," Finn said, his voice tight with panic. "This isn't the place for this." "I disagree," I said. "I think this is the perfect place for this." The recording continued, playing Finn's full confession. His admission that he'd been planning to leave Vera, his discussion of the weekend getaway with Kara, his agreement with Kara's plan to frame me as an abusive husband. By the time it finished, we had an audience of at least 30 people. The conversations around us had died away as people stopped to listen, their faces showing everything from shock to disgust to fascination. "Cole, please," Kara said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Not like this." "Like what? In public? In front of people who know us?" I looked around at the crowd. "These are the same people you were planning to lie to about me, the same people you were going to tell I was abusive, unstable, unfit to be a husband." "I never said that. Didn't you?" I nodded to Gus again. This time he played a selection of the text messages, read aloud in a clear, carrying voice that reached every corner of our growing audience. "Cole's been drinking more lately, getting angry over little things. I've been documenting everything." "Good. Vera's been seeing that therapist. I can probably use that to show she's unstable. We need to be smart about this. Make sure we come out ahead in the divorce proceedings." The crowd was getting larger now, and I could see phones coming out, people recording everything. By tomorrow morning, this would be all over social media. Everyone in town would know exactly what kind of people Kara and Finn really were. "That's enough," Finn said, stepping toward me. "You've made your point." "Have I? Because I'm just getting started." I pulled out a tablet and showed him the photos I'd taken at the Cliffside Inn. Nothing inappropriate, just the two of them walking into the hotel together, holding hands, looking like the happy couple they thought they were. "Nice weekend?" I asked. "How was the spa, Kara? Very relaxing, I'm sure." Kara was crying openly now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. She'd been caught, exposed, and she hated it. "You had no right," she said. "You had no right to spy on us." "I had every right. You're my wife. Or were, anyway." "Cole," Vera said quietly, "I think that's enough." But it wasn't enough. Not yet. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out a manila envelope. "Divorce papers. Already filed. I'm citing adultery and emotional abuse. Your emotional abuse of me." I handed a copy to Kara and another to Finn. "You too, Vera." Vera took the papers with steady hands. "I filed this morning," she said. "Adultery and intentional infliction of emotional distress." The crowd around us was silent now, watching the final act of a marriage that had been fading for months. I looked at Kara, this woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with, and felt nothing but pity. "You could have just left," I said. You could have been honest, told me you weren't happy, asked for a divorce like a decent human being. Instead, you chose to lie and cheat and plan to destroy me. Colt, don't. We're done talking. We're done with everything. I turned to address the crowd that had gathered around us. I want everyone here to know what really happened. These two people, my wife and my brother, spent months planning to betray the people who loved them most. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting to frame us as abusive spouses so they could take everything we'd worked for. A murmur went through the crowd. These were small-town people, and they understood the importance of reputation, of trust, of keeping your word. What Kara and Finn had done wasn't just adultery. It was a betrayal of everything the community stood for. So now you know, I continued. When you see them around town, when they try to tell you their side of the story, remember what you heard here tonight. Remember the recordings, the text messages, the evidence. Remember that they're liars who can't be trusted. Kara was sobbing now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. Finn looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. Around us, the crowd was starting to disperse, people walking away shaking their heads and whispering to each other. Are you happy now? Kara asked, her voice thick with tears and rage, the kind that scraped at the back of her throat. Her eyes were red, shimmering with a mix of fury and humiliation. Are you satisfied? I thought about it for a moment. Really thought. Was I satisfied? Was this enough? Or was I supposed to feel something bigger, heavier, more dramatic? Should I feel guilt, triumph, relief? Yes, I said finally. I think I am. The words didn't echo. They didn't crash like thunder. They simply existed, steady and calm, landing between us with the quiet weight of a truth that had taken too long to surface. Kara and Finn walked away together, shoulders hunched, pushing through the crowd of people who were staring at them, with expressions ranging from disgust to pity to that subtle, almost polite shock small towns specialize in. They'd dressed nicely tonight, Kara in her soft autumn sweater, Finn in a jacket he probably thought made him look respectable. They'd come to the festival expecting a charming evening, maybe a chance to play the victims in their own private drama, to discuss next steps in whatever story they'd been telling themselves. Instead, they had been exposed for what they really were. Not in a courtroom, not through lawyers, not quietly behind closed doors, but right here, under the warm glow of string lights, with the smell of kettle corn drifting in the air and half the town within earshot. And the evidence, recordings, messages, the words they thought were safely hidden, had been undeniable. There was no spinning this, no rewriting it, no charming their way out. Well, Gus said, unplugging the speaker with the same casual competence he used for everything he touched. That was something. Think it was too much? Vera asked, still watching the path Kara and Finn had taken, as if expecting them to turn around and try to fix what couldn't be fixed. I watched Kara and Finn disappear into the darkness beyond the festival lights. Their silhouettes moved stiffly, like people trying to walk in shoes they hadn't earned. Two people who had destroyed their own lives through greed, selfishness, and the arrogant belief that they were smarter than everyone around them. The kind of arrogance that makes you forget the world doesn't bend just because you want it to. No, I said. I think it was exactly enough. The festival continued around us, but everything felt slightly shifted, as though the center of gravity had changed. People were talking in hushed voices, processing what they'd witnessed, trying to match the cheerful glow of the pumpkin lanterns with the sharp reality of the scandal they'd just seen unfold. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves, asking questions about the grown-up argument they didn't understand. Teenagers were typing furiously on their phones, posting stories, updates, little fragments of the truth mixed with their own dramatic commentary. By morning, everyone in town would know. Every grocery line, every church meeting, every barstool conversation would revolve around this night. Kara and Finn's reputations weren't just bruised, they were finished, their social lives destroyed, their carefully constructed images cracked open like a drop jar, content spilling everywhere for everyone to see. And neither of them would be able to claim they didn't deserve it, and I felt perfectly fine about that. Come on, I said to Vera, nudging her gently away from the booth that had just become the most infamous spot in town. Let me buy you a cup of cider. We've got some things to celebrate. As we walked away, weaving through clusters of people who parted for us with a mixture of respect and curiosity, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real peace. Not the brittle, temporary kind that breaks if you breathe too hard. The solid kind that settles into your chest and makes room for itself. The anger was still there, tucked into the corners of my ribs like an old injury, but it was quiet now, satisfied, resting. Justice had been served, Maine style. Public, complete, and absolutely final. Some people might call it revenge, They'd shake their heads and say we'd stoop to the same level. They'd argue that humiliation solves nothing, but I knew better. I'd lived through the lies, the manipulation, the slow, calculated betrayal. I'd watched two people try to erase the truth and replace it with something convenient. What happened tonight wasn't cruelty, it was the truth, finally told in a place where it couldn't be twisted, buried, or denied. And sometimes that's all the justice you can get. Sometimes that's all you need.